Let's go to the next slide, please. Hub88 was formed in 2008 with a mission to ignite the next wave of innovation by accelerating the use of technologies that shape how we work, how we live, and how we learn. So Hub88 is an innovation center that's focused on entrepreneurs and companies, startups, in developing their products and services. So we offer coaching and mentoring, help in networking with the community in their area of technology. And we also provide education such as these tech talks, but also student STEM programs, which will have something to announce in a few weeks about that. Next slide, please. There we go. So kind of an update. We launched in 2008 and received our 501c3 designation in July of 2019. So we're supported and run entirely by volunteers. So our board of directors, I'll introduce, is Martha Carney, Mark Hinch, Phil Huffman, Matt O'Sullivan, and myself, Ken Miller, is chairman. We also have approximately 30 advisory boards, people with different skill sets that work with Nokia in putting on tech talks and education and working with our member companies and entrepreneurs. We have an ecosystem network of getting close to 1,000 at this point that follow Hub88 and work as advisors and help some of our member companies. So Hub88 is located at Nokia. We have a collaboration with Nokia, as you know. They're developing 5G technology. And we're right now today going to announce the Drone Interest Group Initiative, which is another new project for Hub88. So with that, I will introduce to you Dr. Tom Lee. Tom is on our advisory team. He has received a BS in physics from Stanford and got his PhD in physics from UC Berkeley. So he's a serial entrepreneur, so he can tell you more about that. So Tom, take it back. Thank you.
All right. Great. Thanks, Ken. And Lori,
yeah.
You know, thank you so much for pulling this together. Lori, you want to just quickly introduce yourself, talk to me a little about Tech Talk and other things you'd like to share before we get into our agenda here today?
Sure, I'd love to. So I am the programming lead for these Tech Talks, and it happens every month on the second Wednesday, 5 to 7. As you registered today, you can register in the future through hub88.org in our calendar of events. Upcoming in next month, we're doing cybersecurity and remote working. We have already got a pretty interesting panel that includes an attorney and a CISO certified security officer, Michelle Piazza, who's on the advisory board and does risk and compliance consulting for her companies, and she's on the advisory board here at Hub88. Will be moderating that panel. So that's something we're really looking forward to. And then in November, Phil Huffman, who is on the board here at Hub88, and I are working together, but mainly Phil, on high tech and the construction industry. So we've been looking at a bunch of different topics around that, or connections to infrastructure and building of roads in high tech. We've been looking at using computer vision for real estate. So some interesting things there coming up. And then in December, that's our more casual. Usually we'd be out at a place toasting each other, but this year we're going to do some fun things. talking about new tech and tech gadgets and just networking. And we're putting together some interesting things to wrap up this year of 2020. So if you want to know more, you can email hello@hub88.org. And if you want to offer up topic ideas, if you want to be part of the programming committee, or if you'd like to be a potential panelist in the future, please email us and we consider all of that. And then I will hand it back off to Tom, who has already introduced to you, but let me just say one thing that I think is apropos to today, is that Tom is a drone pilot. So you have a drone pilot's license, right, Tom? Is that right?
Yes, I do.
There you go. So he's the right person for this job. Thanks, Tom.
Wow. Boy, that's pressure. That's pressure, Lori.
No problem.
So much. And Lori, I might have you unmute yourself and remind me if I forget to unmute people. So you'll be sort of my right hand there. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
so,
we can tell people that they can put questions into chat. I'll be monitoring chat, and then we can, and at different points during the program today, they'll have an opportunity to, interact with the panel.
Great, fantastic. All right. Okay, so we got a lot to cover. It's going to be great. We have an awesome panel. But let's sort of get to the champagne breaking point. Off the hull of the ship is the, officially announced today. We're very excited about our drone interest group. I'll show you the website, et cetera, and a little bit of our charter. And you'll hear from our subcommittee chairs. We already have several subcommittees that formed even before this has gone public. We've got well over 40, 50 people on the list. Very nominal fee to be members. We got, membership dues coming in, stuff like that to really help support our efforts. But, just to give you all a bit of an introduction here, we very much encourage engagement with students. You'll hear from Tony Techmeyer in a moment about that. You can see how it reflected in sort of how kind of affordable it is to get started. And really the specific membership amenities around the interest group are around involvement in the committees, which you'll hear from in a moment. We are also planning some member-only events, workshops, meetups, particularly when the COVID restrictions start to lift. We have a whole host of companies and individuals who are doing very innovative things that would be awesome to see in demonstrations, live demonstrations, kind of in, near, or around our headquarters at Nokia, hub88 headquarters at Nokia, and we're sort of in the process of really exploring different possibilities there. And as you heard from Ken, there's a broader array of programs and events from hub88 that are either free or you'll get a discounted rate just on those things by just being a DIG member. And also, we really believe, and we hope that you'll see from the interaction among the panelists today in connecting people with each other. And so we think a big benefit is being able to have the contact information within our growing drone interest group membership base, so you can reach out and start forming those connections. And it's interesting is that since things have gone virtual with COVID, and in fact, Ernest here, who's one of our panelists from North Texas, we're already starting to have some national reach, actually. And I think I see some of the folks here. We've got 45 people that are on this Zoom out of a registrant list of, I think, only 70 or 80, which is like an unbelievably high attachment rate. And I think you can see that that there are people, some of you from different parts of the country. So we think we'll talk a lot about Illinois today and the role we think we can play in this ecosystem, but it definitely goes national. And then the last thing you'll hear a lot more from Matt O'Sullivan about in a moment is really providing basic access, a basic level of access to a drone lab that I'll allow Matt to tell you more about. And we're really excited about as being a resource for entrepreneurs and innovators in the Chicagoland area. Okay, and so again, contact us. There's drones at hub88.org, if you're very specifically interested in our drone interest group, or you can also email us generally at hello@hub88.org to learn about our group as well as Hub88 in general. So one other thing I want to show you all is just the website. So if you just go to Hub88, it's under Drone Lab, and all of what I just described there is an interest group. There's a way you can register too, if you'd like to go ahead and do that. But please, you know, email us if you've got any questions. It comes right into my inbox as well. And we'd be happy to engage you and see not only what you think of today's session, but what ideas and interests you have going forward. And then finally, yes, it's official. We have a charter that's been vetted, and among kind of the founding members, 40 plus people strong. And, you know, I really now want to hand it over to the chairs and co-chairs of our subcommittees in the order here. And you can see we're spanning policy and regulatory issues, the technology stack, the drone lab I mentioned, and then very importantly, student engagement, both at the high school and the university level. So I'm going to go ahead and unmute Rena, who is one of our co-chairs for the policy committee. So let me go and find Rena in our now nearly 50-person long panel. Let's see, where is Rena? There she is. Okay, Rena, I'm going to ask you to unmute. So go ahead and unmute yourself now. There you go.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, and we can see you too.
Excellent. Okay, wonderful. All systems go then. Well, welcome everyone. Super excited to be here. As Tom mentioned, I'm one of the co-chairs of the Policy and Regulatory Subcommittee. You're going to hear from my other co-chair, Alpita Shah, who's going to be speaking on the panel. Our subcommittee, and we have the mission statement on the screen right now, is educate and advocate for policies, regulation, and legislation to further the mission of this group. So the way I think about it is in those two ways. First of all, educating both this community in terms of some of the legal aspects and regulatory aspects that apply, especially for entrepreneurs who are looking at developing, you know, drone technology and really understanding from the front end, well, what are some of the current, you know, parameters and guidelines to keep in mind as you're looking at developing technology. And also, I think educating the broader community on some of the issues that might be of interest to them, both the Hub88 community and even broader than that. And then the second aspect of our subcommittee is the advocacy piece. So we are looking to develop relationships with, you know, the chambers of the world and the business community, as well as government entities and government officials, in order to advocate for the responsible use of drone technology and you know, common sense types of regulations. And as part of that, also, we would like to, you know, file amicus briefs and follow the courts and really try to advocate for change for the drone community. So that's in a nutshell what we are. So happy to see so many people interested in our subcommittee.
Great, thank you, Rena. I don't know about you guys, but when you hear the phrase amicus brief, you know that we're up to real business. Okay, I'll just leave it at that. Okay, so thank you so much, Rena. Let's go over to Ron Olson, who's the chair of our technology committee. So Ron, I'm gonna go ahead and ask you to unmute yourself. Let's see, Ron, where are you? Apologies. I think this might be under a different name. Ron, could you chat me what name you're under? I'm sorry. It seemed to, you know what? Let's skip Ron for now. We'll come back to Ron. So Matt O'Sullivan, let's talk about the drone lab. Let me unmute you. Okay, there you are. Okay, go ahead and there you go, Matt.
Okay.
Hey, Matt.
Excellent. Tom, if you wouldn't mind putting up the drone lab slide, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So my name is Matt O'Sullivan. I co-chair the drone lab along with Mark Hinch, and we both serve on the board as well. the work that we're doing in the drone lab will naturally build off of the work that we've already been doing over the last couple of years with the communications lab. So for those that aren't aware of it, hub88 has a pretty extensive communication lab that's already established. It's located at Nokia in Naperville. We're actually located inside the Bell Labs Technology Leadership Council's Garage Innovation Center. And it's quite extensive in terms of the capabilities that we have. It includes not only 5G, but also 4G LTE communications infrastructure. There's all of the work and support work that's required for the core network. We have both indoor, outdoor capabilities. And the idea with the lab is that for innovations, for companies, whether they're startups or growth stage companies that are interested in developing their use cases, we want to help to accelerate that work by providing a lot of the infrastructure so that you can focus more on your use case rather than some of the support work that's required. So, you know, with that, we see probably more activity in terms of the ancillary equipment, some of the, I'll call it the payload, and some of the other sensors and things that attach to it, and we allow that that equipment to very easily be connected into a core infrastructure so that you can continue on with your innovations. If there's ever any questions, if you need assistance or support, please feel free to reach out to me or to Mark Hinch. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Matt. Let's now move over to Tony and student engagement. So let me bring up Tony. There you are, Tony. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you, Tom. As Tom mentioned, my name is Tony Tegmeyer, and I am the chair, looking for a co-chair of the education committee. And I'm super excited to be here and super excited about what hub88 can offer to students. There are so many opportunities in drones, which is why we've created this committee. And I'm super excited because I teach engineering at Neuqua Valley High School here in Naperville, and we just started an aerospace engineering class. I get a lot of questions about how to build drones, how to do anything with drones. So I'm looking to incorporate that into my curriculum. And there's just a tremendous opportunity to reach out to students through K-12 and even beyond. So the things that we want to do here are to educate some students by creating opportunities in our drone labs. We are looking at creating some spaces for them to test and build and fly, hopefully. Now we'll also have some educational programs, hoping to get some interesting guest speakers and help kids explore different career opportunities, of which there are many. Tom is a drone pilot. I'm sure many of you on the call are drone pilots, and I'm seeking mine. But there are tremendous opportunities in the drone industry, not just being a pilot, but doing all kinds of other things, regardless of what vertical you're in. So we want to educate on the opportunities. We want to give them some hands-on experience. And we are also engaging with some other people around the country. Some of those gentlemen are on the call here, and I'm sure they'll talk about it, through some STEM contests, whether that be racing or a drone building contest, something that really gets kids excited about drones and the opportunities. Kids love hands-on. So I welcome your feedback and your input and comments as we create and evolve this program. Thanks, Tom.
Great, thanks, Tony. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the technology subcommittee here. I think Ron may be having some technical issues, and we perhaps we may have Ryan and or Chuck on the line too, so you guys can just text or chat me if you'd like to also say something. But really quick, and I can speak this from my personal experience. You can see my my background here with what ultimately I think could be very interesting. I'm a healthcare guy by background. There's just so many different parts of the technology. You've got the payload, you've got obviously the sensor side, you've got the airframe, like all these things. And, you know, as an entrepreneur who's trying to kind of make heads or tails of all of this in terms of what's really right for prime time, one can literally spend your whole life trying to keep up with what's going on in the different areas of the technology stack to understand what's best for your project or your business. And so under Ron's leadership and with close collaboration with Ryan Walsh from Valqari, as well as from Chuck Byers, they put together some really cool ideas about, you know, how can that process of discovery and vetting be a lot more efficient by putting together our collective networks and knowledge in a way that makes it very easy to digest, you know, for people who are really trying to do stuff and build stuff in the drone space. Okay, so let's move on. And what I'm now going to do is, and again, I'm going to try to do this unmuting here in a selective way, is I'm going to have each of our panelists introduce themselves. And I think for that, while you're speaking, I'll actually bring up the actual event page. You're going to see everyone's name. So I'm going to go kind of in the order of who I see. So why don't we start with Sharon Rossmark, and I will unmute you, Sharon, if you wouldn't mind spending the, you know, up to 5 minutes or so roughly, and I'll try to signal, but I'm sure it's all going to be good. So go ahead, Sharon.
Great, thank you. And hello, everyone. I'm thrilled to be here. As Tom said, my name is Sharon Rossmark. I'm the CEO of Women in Drones. I'm also a FAA certified drone pilot, which means I can fly drones commercially, and I do. A little bit about Women in Drones. Our company was founded in May of 2017. And globally, we're best known for our work and support to promote the engagement of women in the industry, as well as our strategic partnerships to promote drone education in the classroom. We like to refer to it as our initiative support kindergarten through career. Our lesser known work is our commercial drone flight services, which includes aerial flights capturing data for industries such as construction, water erosion, real estate, and infrastructure inspections, just to name a few. And then lastly, we also do product testing for new drone products and product releases and drone accessories. As you can imagine that if companies are not engaging women in their product development, when they create controls or headsets or something, they are not necessarily sized to fit for women. So we've been contacted by several companies to engage us in that process also. So that's actually a fun piece. So that's just a little bit about myself and Women in Drones.
Great, thanks, Sharon. And I've stopped sharing my desktop so you all can see, you know, the speaker's image is a little bit larger. So that's why it went off. So Alpita, let me unmute you. And Alpita, let's see here. So go ahead and unmute yourself. Okay, great. Alpita, are you there?
I am.
Okay, great. And Alpita, do you want me to show your slides while you why don't you go ahead and get started, and I'll kind of pop your slides up here while you're speaking.
Yeah, I don't want to get too techie here, but it's a pleasure to be here. This is like amongst friends. I have connections to all the panelists from different parts of my life and professional life, and even my subcommittee chair and I go back to high school days. So this is, it feels like home here. I'm thrilled to be here. Sharon, who just spoke, she was gracious enough to have her every month they spotlight somebody, and I was fortunate to be spotlighted in Women in Drones last month. So I am a partner at a law firm called Chico and Nunes. It's a small minority law firm in Chicago. I'm in the aviation practice group, and many of us, we're small, about 14 lawyers, and many of us have worked in government. So prior to joining last year, Chico and Nunes, I was at the City of Chicago Law Department, where my main client was the Department of Aviation. And you will hear from Ernest later on, who worked also at O'Hare earlier in his career. My interest in drones was sparked in 2000, I mean, more in the regulatory side was sparked in 2015 when our office was asked by aldermen to prepare the first, one of the first, or if not the first, city ordinance on regulating drones, which, so if you guys will know, later on we'll talk about the FAA regulations of 101 and 107 for commercial and hobbyists didn't come out till 2016. And in 2014, we had the joy of our Lollapalooza festival where a drone was flying and taking beautiful pictures, and then it was on YouTube, and that became a lot of press. And so that, you know, raised some concerns. And then in 2015, what happened was at Midway Airport, a drone went in the path of a Black Hawk helicopter that was doing a test trial for the National Guard. So that got the city kind of, and the constituents riled up. So we put this drone ordinance was passed in 2015. And then in 2016, the FAA came out with more comprehensive regulations. So our ordinance was challenged in 2017, and we may need to redo it. They may need to redo it. So that was my interest. I also, in aviation and airports, but also I spent, prior to this, I spent over a decade in international development, working at the World Bank and in the US government, particularly in some global health issues, like setting up the Global Fund to fight AIDS, TB, and malaria, as well as working in India with the UN Special Representative on Right to Health. So with that, those two backgrounds and interests, I was thrilled that in Chicago, there is a burgeoning company, Valqari, which is in the drone delivery space, and medical supplies delivery could be in their very near future, if not now. So that's exciting. And Geoff, my colleague, is also on the panel. So let's go to the slides. So this is why I'm here. And I'm also co-chairing with Rena, the hub88 committee. So drone regulation in Illinois. Of course, I just wanted to give a quick overview, maybe 2 minutes. And Tom, wave to me when we're over time. You know, first structure, we've got the FAA regulations. And now they, unlike in 2015, they've evolved a little more. We've got registration requirements for commercial and hobbyists, and the 107 license for commercial pilots. And I think you guys probably already know this, but those are the basic points. Pounds, under 55, visual line of sight, maximum altitude of 400 feet. That's the FAA regulation. So that's kind of where the federal rules and waivers requests come in. Illinois also in 2016 came out with 2014 to 2016 several different laws regulating UA or drones, and it first said that the state would be the primary regulator within Illinois after the federal government, except for municipalities over 1 million, which is Chicago, and that's where we'd already done some. When I was in the city of Chicago, we'd already done something. Then there are law enforcement. A statute allowing law enforcement to use drones for various purposes. And then there is drones and wildlife. So those are kind of the 4 anchors. And also in Illinois in 2016, a task force was created by the law in 2014, and they came out with a report. Now, on their subcommittee, I think looking at that report now and seeing where we can take it going forward would be something that maybe this group could think about. So keep going. So Illinois, so you've got the federal, and then you've got Illinois, and then the Chicago ordinance I talked about, we passed in 2015, and it was supposed to not conflict with federal rules, which were different then because we didn't have 107. So the language was in there, but keep going. So that ordinance was passed in 2015. And there are some municipalities now, even though the Illinois law said not over 1 million, for those municipalities under 1 million, they cannot regulate. In the task force report, there were recommendations that would allow municipalities to maybe create zone-friendly flying spaces and park districts to get involved. So we've seen that in a handful of different municipalities. So if you're looking at flying a drone, there's a lot to think about. You know, the federal, the local, the state. Keep going. Next slide, please. And then, of course, in 2017, I'm just sort of taking you from 2014 to now, there was a challenge to somebody with a Part 107 at the time. Pilot was flying and was charged by the Chicago police, but then they were let off because of federal preemption. So I think we're at a time where my understanding is my former office is looking at possibly revising that ordinance. So this could be an opportunity for an interest group to advocate any points. Last slide, I think and thank you. That was probably over 5 minutes, but thank you for your time.
Oh, Alpita, you're good. You're good. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think goes without saying, for those of us who have flown before, it's always in the back of our minds. What will the police do when they come, right? And also, what does that family over there think about me flying this drone over here, right? There's a whole kind of subtext of the fear and uncertainty around, and these things that hit the media, you know, don't really help the situation. So let's switch over to Jacob Reed from Lewis University. So Jacob, I'm gonna go ahead and unmute you here. Hey, Jacob.
Hi, Tom. So yeah, I'm Jacob Reed. I'm with Lewis University. We are located in Romeoville, and we're located on the Lewis University Airport. I currently am the program director for our unmanned aircraft systems program at the university. So we are a part of the aviation department, where we have other majors, college majors that deal with aviation. And my section of that is specifically unmanned aircraft. So students come to Lewis University seeking a full 4-year bachelor's degree in unmanned aircraft systems. So there actually is a degree for it now. We're one of the only schools in the Chicago area to offer it, in one of the few in the Midwest to offer such a degree. But there are some schools throughout the country that are getting on board with this and offering similar degrees. I came to Lewis out of the Coast Guard, where I did search and rescue, and I was a maintainer on helicopters. So I do have an aviation background from the military, search and rescue, working with different sensors like night vision and other such sensors that we had on board. So that really kind of piqued my interest into unmanned aircraft when I got out. So I got out and earned my master's in unmanned systems. So I cover everything, and I cover everything in terms of the degree. We have classes that also touch on other unmanned systems, such as ground vehicles and marine vehicles, and a little bit of space vehicles, but other unmanned vehicles, so that the students understand all the possibilities and avenues that they can explore with unmanned systems. We try to focus a lot on the different sensors that are out there and what they could be used for. Today I had a lecture on sensors. We have a class that gets the students prepared for the Part 107 regulations and gets everybody prepared to take the licensing for the Part 107 test. I am a certified Part 107 pilot and have been for a few years now. And then we go out and we do operational flights. So we do NDVI flights looking at crops for agriculture, because we have a lot of students who come from the south and the west of Illinois, where their parents own farms. So that is of great interest. We do mapping and modeling of different buildings and areas on campus and take those and work with those. We do different thermal camera tasks, looking at buildings for heat loss, looking at some of the towers that we have on campus. So we really try to get the students involved in many different operations to just kind of give them a taste of everything and get them prepared for whatever career they may choose coming out of the university. And we're starting to see a growing demand for the unmanned jobs. And I think we're going to see that big time now after the pandemic, of really trying to use unmanned systems to kind of distance people, especially for medical supplies, deliveries, getting into hard to reach places. I like the search and rescue aspect of it, of course. So I really try to focus my research on search and rescue. and interoperability using unmanned systems and manned systems working together to achieve a task.
Very fantastic. You know, and Jacob, just, you know, hearing you talk about, and when we were prepping before this panel about what you're working on and all the different use cases, I mean, we just open up, you know, the news and we see all these fires going on, you know, and one naturally wonders about what future potential this technology has to maybe try to snuff things out before it gets out of hand with a wildfire. And I also hear like an interesting talk about a year and a half ago, where it's proposal to use drones to essentially reforest major parts of the world by basically shooting the seed down into the ground. Yeah, I can tell you've seen that. It's like when drones can start to do stuff and not just to view stuff, like it's a total game changer, right? But of course, the lawyers here are, you know, probably sweating big time now about, okay, how are we gonna, you know, where's the amicus brief for that to happen, right? So it'll be a really, really interesting meld of things. So thanks so much, Jacob. Let's move over to Geoff Graves. And thank you, Penny, for sharing your question on chat. Just a reminder to everyone to please just chat your question to everyone, so that way, you know, we don't get a lot of repeat questions to sift through. And so I'm going to go ahead and let Geoff, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself. Go ahead.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Pleasure to be here. In awe of the other members of the panel, I'm now tempted to go and sign up to Lewis University, but not tempted to be a lawyer though. So my background is basically, I was a pilot before I left high school. In fixed wing aircraft in the UK, I was paid for by the Royal Air Force, but decided that I didn't want to join the military. So I did a degree in transport management and planning, which at the time did not include drones, which is, you know, fascinating to find them coming up and their niche being identified and exploited. You probably noticed I'm not from here, but I came to Chicago in 1988, actually, and I did a master's in at UIC. Worked for Maersk Lines and in transportation, and so have a good familiarity of what goes on in ports and the inspection requirements for long distance railways and such. I moved to Australia, started doing disaster management. So I'm fascinated to see how drones are being used to spot embers and spot fires and the like. And also, I mean, like, there are some really interesting use cases of using explosives to precipitate avalanches in ski slopes. And you know, there's just a wealth of things that drones can do. Most of the things that manned aviation can do, and then some more. After Australia, I started working for the United Nations in international development, disaster relief. I've worked in 2 or 3 conflict zones, and where drones have a completely different reputation. So I'm very pleased to be part of the, I think the burgeoning market of drones in the in a more commercial and peacetime role. As part of my activity, international development, I was doing monitoring and evaluation for the European equivalent of USAID. And one of the programs that they asked me to look at was the first commercial use of drones for the delivery of cold chain vaccines in Vanuatu. We'll probably come back to that, but it was a fascinating experience. Showed me a lot of what drones could do. You know, the complete edge they have over, well, in the Vanuatu context. Very briefly, it was the most expensive place to get vaccines for a child requires in the first year of its life. There was up to $22 a vaccine, which is of transport cost, not the cost of the vaccine, pure transport cost, because the way of the existing transportation network was basically planes, boats, trucks, motorcycles, donkeys, and foot. And as you got further and further into the more wilder part of Vanuatu, would cost anything up to $200 per child if there's just one child at the end of that logistics network, and would take 3, 4, 5 days. Drones, 40 minutes, $5. You know, that kind of edge and niche that the drones have over existing delivery networks, I found fascinating, particularly with my background in health and development. And I was making a presentation to UNICEF, who were the recipients of the funding from actually the Australian aid agency, and said that, you know, one of the things that we had identified as being a problem was that every drone delivery needed a manual loading and manual unloading, which required nurses to get away from patient-facing activities and go out and clear the playing fields of children and dogs to actually receive the vaccines. This guy put his hand up in the audience and said, actually, I've got the intellectual property for that. And that's how I met Ryan Walsh, the founder and CEO of Valqari. And I've been working with him ever since. Valqari, just as a quick recap of what Alpita said, is first of all, encourage you to check out the website. But it's the drone delivery solution for the last inch of that last mile. So if the drones are the last mile, that last inch, that interface between the drone and the human, potentially very risky, lots of propellers around, and obviously requires people to step away from their existing roles. With a drone delivery landing station, de-risk, makes it super efficient and enables 24/7, 365 days a week, days a year deliveries. I've been working with them, looking at strategic partnerships around the globe, various vertical markets, and obviously geographic markets. That basically is me.
All right. Can you, Lori, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, good. Sorry, there was like a little dropout here of internet. But I did hear everything. Thank you,
Yep.
Geoff. You know, the international perspective is huge. We can certainly learn so much, and the fact that you know, drones now has also become a bit of even a political football among countries to some extent. It's sort of an interesting intersection with you know, all kinds of other aspects of particularly what's going to happen now going forward with COVID and what emerges as the new normal. The extent to which drones can play roles in whether it's public health, prevention, or remedy, it's going to be a global game from the get-go, you know, unlike many other industries that sort of took a while to get there. All right, well, let's now round out with Ernest. So Ernest, I'm gonna go ahead and unmute you. Oops. All right, I think I just lost my Zoom. So Lori, could you unmute Ernest if you can still hear me?
I sure can.
Thank you.
Ernest. I gotta find you, Ernest. Give me a second.
I got him. I got him.
You got him? Okay, thank you.
There we go.
We just went through 50 attendees, my friend Ernest.
Yes, we did.
Lori, thank you for scrolling through. It took a while. Go ahead, Ernest.
Hey, good evening. First of all, I want to thank Ms. Rossmark and you, Tom, for inviting me to this panel. Very honored. First of all, I want to give you guys a look at who I am. I am the Aviation Planning and Education Program Manager North Central Texas Council of Governments. North Central Texas Council of Governments is the DFW region's metropolitan planning organization and council of governments. We represent 16 counties and we do surface transportation planning throughout our particular metropolitan region. Now, just as an aside, I'm not a drone guy, I'm an airport guy. I came down 4 years ago from Chicago as an airline technical representative managing the O'Hare monetization program for the airlines for 5 or so years. Also, I do a lot of aviation planning and economist type work in my previous consulting career. So when I got down here to Dallas in the DFW region, I didn't know a lick about drones. It wasn't a topic in Chicago at all. But the first few emails I got upon arriving, and I mean within days, were from folks asking me, what am I gonna do about the drones flying above my yard, flying near my airport, etc. And I thought, first of all, I didn't know what to do. I thought a lot of these folks were crazy because the emails I would get were extremely long and detailed, and it just wasn't an issue for me. But engaging with other stakeholders around the community, going to committee meetings, I soon learned that drone integration, reckless drone flights in and around airports and other critical infrastructure was a huge issue in our region because it's a large region in the United States. Fast forward, our airports came to me. I manage what's called our Air Transportation Advisory Committee, which is comprised of all of our general aviation airports and also our 2 commercial service airports in the region, where we talk about these planning issues and these particular issues. And they had an issue with drones flying recklessly in their airspace. The FAA hadn't come out with their Part 107 ruling. The state hadn't done anything, so they asked me, what could we do? So we, just like you guys, Alpita, we worked on creating a model ordinance for our region where our particular cities in the region can adopt it and govern where aircraft take off and where drones take off and land in their airspace or in their particular jurisdiction. But then the state of Texas, just like the state of Illinois, came out with legislation outlawing local municipalities from creating drone ordinances. They did not give us the caveat of if you have a population over 1 million people, you can do something. So that locked us securely in place. And still, I still had a problem though with reckless drones flying in our metroplex. So that's what I came up with, what's called the North Central Texas or North Texas UAS Safety Integration Task Force idea. Just like your drone interest group, we started pulling together stakeholders in the region, folks that were smarter than me on the issue of drones and who knew more about drones than myself, because at the call, we didn't have that in our wheelhouse, to try to determine or try to solve this issue outside of what the state was doing and even what the federal government was doing. And we started just like you guys in October of 2018 with maybe 20 to 40 interested individuals like you. And today we now have 270 individuals and 130 plus organizations represented on the task force level. And that's stakeholders from all manner of sector. You got manufacturers, academia, law enforcement, and mom and pop shops, training shops. Anybody you can think of is involved with our task force. And we've been doing the job of trying to safely and efficiently integrate drone tech in our municipality or in our metroplex over the last 2 years or so.
That's great. And I mean, Ernest just basically cross-cut across so many different important topics. And I think having, Ernest, both your great work in Chicago and now really spinning up, as you said, a lot of echoes of what we're trying to do here down in Texas. We are really excited to, start really building that kind of almost like a sister region type of relationship, with you and your organization. And we're looking forward to getting, your feedback and insights on some of the questions we're going to go through here. Okay, so what we're now going to do is we're going to go into our panel. And Lori, again, because of my internet issues, Lori, if you wouldn't mind asking each of the panelists to unmute. So we've got Sharon and Alpita, Jacob, Geoff, and Ernest. And I'm just going to go in the order again of your self-intro. So we'll start with Sharon. And what I'm going to do here is, and Lori's helping me monitor the Q&A, and there are a couple questions there that I'll cue Lori to read out. But what we're going to do is we're also going to go through a couple of questions for each panelist to talk about, or sort of weave some things in. Please feel free to chat into to everyone on the box if any of you have any follow-on questions from these questions we're about to explore, okay? And again, we're capturing the chat script, and even if we can't get to it today, we really hope to be able to follow up with you at a minimum afterwards. Okay, so Sharon, if you had a magic wand, okay, what's the one thing you'd change about the drone industry?
Well, you would say one. I actually, my wand is two-pronged, so I've got two, but I'll start with one. I would say my number one, God, it's hard to pick these, but the very first one is public awareness. I think that there's still a opportunity to better educate the public on the value that drones bring. In my experience and in our strategic partnerships of educating the public about drones, they are amazed and surprised about the capability. I think there's still some learning curve at the local level across the country, because what they don't understand is that we're at an actually unique inflection point in aviation. Never in our history have we seen such a massive adoption at a rapid pace as we have with drones of aircraft taken to the skies. And so because of that, and it's because now there's more talk about drone delivery and the capabilities there, I think there needs to be a more heightened awareness effort to educate the public about drones, because I think a lot of people think of drones either what they see on the news, which is most of the time not good, or they may think of their neighbor's kid flying the drone around their house, and or you may have that errant drone that maybe someone may think is trying to spy into a high rise. So my magic wand would be two-pronged in the sense of public awareness, and I'll just toss this other one out there, but I won't go into it. And that's really around establishing a federal policy for drone privacy, because I don't think people really understand how important, how badly we need a privacy policy that's consistent in terms of operating drones as we start to expand the capabilities.
That's great. And so I'm going to invite, before we kind of give each of you the magic wand, let me invite my other panelists here to just feel free to speak freely, share any thoughts or even a follow-on question or two that we can explore together. Maybe Alpita, I'll just kind of put you on the spot real quick. Sharon mentioned, you know, the privacy, kind of the regulatory side of it and how it sort of intertwines with the public awareness and the safety fear. You know, how do you look at that kind of from your standpoint?
Yeah, so so two things with the magic wand. I do want to agree with Sharon that I think we need an awareness campaign about the drones for good, and to pointing to what Geoff had said, that in certain post-conflict regions, drones have an image of not being for good, right? So to change that image, but part of that changing that is having people feel comfortable with the privacy issue, right? And so I'm going to now pass it to my colleague Rena, who's the co-chair of the subcommittee with me and has some background in this. Rena?
Yeah, Rena, we can unmute you. Go ahead,
Great.
Rena.
Yeah, and I know there were a couple of questions in the chat. Tom, should I just address those briefly now, or I don't want to derail things?
Yeah, no, we're on time. We'll just go for it right now, and we'll get right back on the magic wand.
Sure. You know, and just to give a high-level overview, you know, there are not, once you're looking at the airspace that's not regulated by the FAA, you know, so below that, there are not drone-specific privacy regulations per se that are going to regulate behavior of, of drone enthusiasts or commercial use of drones. However, there is a patchwork of privacy law and case law that applies to, govern people's actions. So, one sort of bucket, which I kind of will set aside because it's just different, is when you have law enforcement involved, you have, or other sort of governmental uses of drones that might touch on surveillance, you have the Fourth Amendment that applies. And the Fourth Amendment is there to, protect you from unreasonable search and seizure and within your home and in other places. So there has been a lot of case law and discussion about, well, if a drone, flies over your property, is that a search? The way that it works right now is pretty much it's not. And the way that the Supreme Court looks at these issues is, well, what's your reasonable expectation of privacy? So as we are looking at, the Amazons of the world coming through and drones just becoming more and more prevalent, oddly enough, the more that they're out there, the less it will have an expectation of privacy, and the less likely it'll be protected by the constitutional, amendment, the Fourth Amendment. So, but that's really limited to the space of law enforcement. So I know that there was a question that specifically asked about using heat sensors to know who is home and who has an empty house. If there's a famous case about cannabis and heat sensors where, somebody may have been growing some, some recreational items in their backyard, and the police did look at, use heat sensors and then found probable cause to go in and search, for the marijuana. And so that's sort of an analog, but the court again said, if it's something that you can see, if there is, if you throw something in the garbage in the alley and somebody can pick it up, there's not an expectation of privacy there. So the law is not, does not closely regulate that even from a law enforcement perspective. Now you're saying, okay, well, what about, private individuals who have their recreational drones and they're coming and looking in my, in my window or taking pictures, I think was another one of the questions. So you're looking at things like trespass, so that's a very basic, but you'd have to file a lawsuit. But we do have this right to, protect our property. And one of the ways to do that is saying, well, you are not allowed to come on my property, and whether that be via drone or some other way, you are not allowed to do that. So trespass is one of those. And then there are a whole host of what's called privacy torts. So intrusion on privacy, and then there's publicity of private facts, and that's really about sort of, what I have, what I do behind closed doors shouldn't be out in the world. So, there are these torts that apply. And then I'll say this third category, but that would really require filing a lawsuit. And then the third category is looking at, the kinds of data. And that's where you do see some more regulations around privacy. And some are showing up around data security too, when you're looking at certain devices, and protecting people's personal information and other private information. But it really, that's a case by case basis, depending on what information the drone is collecting, in what manner, how long do they retain it. Here, I've mentioned this before, here in Illinois, we have something called the Biometric Information Privacy Act. Now, if you have a drone that's able to capture biometric information, so a retinal scan, or even, it's going back and forth between the courts, but a facial geometry scan, that's biometric information, allegedly under the law, and you'd need to give a consent and disclosure before collecting that information of how long you were going to keep it. So, this may have gone on, so my apologies, a little longer than needed, but, there's a patchwork of laws that are really nipping at different areas of this, but there's really no comprehensive law looking at, privacy for drones.
So Rena,
So
right
call to
now,
action.
go ahead.
Call to action. Join our policy and regulatory committee now.
That's right. Get it.
And this is just Illinois. What about the other 49 states? So go ahead, Alpita.
I was just going to say, somebody, Frank here talks about the Texas Privacy Act. I mean, this is, I think, what Sharon was mentioning, that we really need a national kind of agenda on this. And we can do things at the state level, but, we're not too far from the border of Indiana or from, these drones can fly over. So the federal airspace, in the Part 101 and 107, there are strong restrictions on not trespassing, right? That what Rena was saying from the state or the common law perspective, but there are federal laws on that for hobbyists and not trespassing. And you can have, the FAA can come in and law enforcement can go in if they don't have the authorization to go over somebody else's private property. So you can call enforcement on that. Now, if it's a law enforcement that's actually doing the surveillance, you get into more of the Fourth Amendment, and the Illinois has passed those laws, as I mentioned, allowing for law enforcement to use drones to counter terrorist attacks, in situations for public health. We haven't seen yet what's happening in Asia with the drones enforcing social distancing, but that, so I think that's going to be in the public square a lot now, and a federal leadership would be welcome. I agree.
And Frank,
Great.
Frank had,
Alpita, I'll take that as your magic wand right there. That was a great tangent. We'll definitely get back on track here, but this was fantastic. Thank you all for sharing those questions. So Jacob, let's flip over to you now in terms of your magic wand. What would it be? What would you use it on?
Well, you know what? I want to follow up on those comments, and then I see Penny just posted a question here on taking photos or videos of your own property, and how high are you allowed to go? And this is really where the Part 107 kind of comes in, and it's, if you wanted to take this out and you wanted to take pictures of your own property, or you have a vacation property, you want to take pictures of it, and you're just doing it for your own purposes and to have them or post them on, a family, cloud or something, then there's nothing wrong with that. That is a recreational purpose. It's the minute that you start to use this for a commercial purpose to make money is when the Part 107 comes into play, and you have to follow the Part 107 regulations. But the issue becomes is what exactly is your property and what is considered the national airspace. And I've had discussions with FAA agents on this, and they say as soon as you lift off the ground, you are in national airspace. It doesn't matter how high you are. You could be 6 inches, you could be 400 feet. You are in the national airspace, and therefore you have to start following, or at least acting like a licensed pilot or a competent pilot to be acting in the airspace. So those are some things to understand and consider as you're going forward and moving forward with those type of flights and operations. So, I agree with Sharon that we need more education. The word drone gets thrown out a lot, and it does have some negative thoughts in people's minds. We really try to stress unmanned aircraft, platforms, other words that you can use to describe these vehicles when we're talking about it in terms of my classroom situation with my students, to just try and change things up a little bit. But I think the other area that needs a little bit more education on this is the law enforcement, first responder side, because we all know that you have to register the aircraft. It's $5 through the FAA, and you get the long registration number. It's not an N number like a normal manned aircraft, although you can do that. But you get this registration number, but what does it necessarily do? If I crash this at an event or law enforcement comes upon it, it's not so easy for them to access that like a license plate. And they can't really get that information off of there. So if somebody was going to use this for nefarious purposes, it can really kind of sidetrack an investigation. And so I think, I see it so many times at summer events in the past, but you know, concerts and fireworks displays where people are up and they're taking videos and they're flying over people and they're clearly breaking regulations, even though they may just be doing it as a hobby. But I think law enforcement needs to understand the risks that are involved with that and understand how to you know, talk to the pilot, educate the pilot. You know, they may just be completely oblivious and it just may be somebody just trying to have fun. But I think that law enforcement kind of needs to be aware that there are other privacy concerns in place with this, and other issues at play with it. So, you know, I've gone to talks and talked to first responders and hosted meetings with them at the university to try and educate them more about the rights that pilots have, and the do's and don'ts of basically operating these aircraft.
Great, thanks, Jay. So it really sounds like we're getting a lot of votes for the public awareness, the education. I mean, I'm even familiar with some, you know, local municipalities, city governments that they're not aware that their drone ordinance is in violation of state law. You know, that they're claiming authority that they actually don't have, and they're just waiting for, you know, and they're not even aware of it, you know, for someone to challenge it in court, and it ends up being a waste of everyone's time. You know, so let's move over to Geoff, and so tell us your magic wand.
I'm tempted to say I want more than one magic wand as well, but I'll hold back on that one. I think that the thing that I'm really would like people to be a little more forward-leaning, a little more aware of the complete breadth that the drone activities, you know, the drones can support. But in the last week or so, I've been talking with ports that are looking at using drones to do volumetric analysis of coal and bauxite on the side of the port, waiting for a ship to come in. Railways, power lines, all those kind of enormous things that you know, previously done by helicopters at, you know, $5,000 an hour and beyond, they could all go to drone, and they can be done a lot safer. I mean, if a drone comes down, there at least isn't a pilot, and there's a lot less mass in them, so you know, there's a lot less danger. So the de-risking possibilities from drone activities, we don't talk enough about the good stuff. We don't talk enough about the, I mean, you know, law enforcement, security. I get there's a place for it, but you know, it's more about the, you know, environmental monitoring of ships in the ocean, using the hyper really polluting fuel. You can monitor that with a drone, and you can do it cheaply. Illegal illegal underreported and unmonitored fishing. You don't need to send a P5 Orion out to the ocean. You can do it with a drone. And so I think my magic wand is to be a bit of a cheerleader, to you know, and hopefully this will percolate down to the investment community, which seems to be sitting on its hands a bit to see who'll go first. I mean, we're looking at the Google and Wing in Australia. I see that Amazon just got their Part 135 limited permit. And just to respond to a question earlier that's got traveling over streets and sidewalks, the limitations on Amazon's permit to fly are enormous. You know, they can't fly over people, they can't fly over houses. You know, it's a really a trial. I think everyone's feeling their way forward. I think the FAA in particular, and in conjunction with NASA, who've got some public consultations going on, we're all trying to feel our way forward, but we're not realizing quite how useful and beneficial drones can be across the board. I mean, my personal favorite is obviously medical and humanitarian, for that, because that's where I see the greatest value. But it's all good. It's really all good, and we you know, seeing the place for UAVs or RPAS or whichever set of acronyms you'd like to use in place of drones. It's a huge market, and we really need to be embracing and so forward-leaning, rather than worrying about what could go wrong, invasion of privacy, etc. Valid concern. If I can just finish with an anecdote, that was the operators in Vanuatu were concerned that the villages over which they flew would be worried about their privacy, and they'd be worried about flying over holy sites. After about a week, the various villages realizing the vaccines for their children were coming in by drones, and drones had all sorts of other capabilities that weren't being mentioned. The men were asking, if you can use the drones to identify where the pigs would be that day to go hunting, and the women were asking where there's a kind of crop called kava. They're asking where the kava plants were. So there's a lot more positive sentiment about drones that needs to be untapped, and we can only really do it if we talk about the good things that we can do.
Great, thanks, Geoff. I mean, would any of our other panelists like to speak to what Geoff just talked about there? I mean, there's sort of kind of alignment with some themes, but I heard some new things in there too. Anyone? All right. So Ernest,
sorry,
go ahead.
If I can just add on to it, like we're talking about drones as if drones only go long distances and beyond visual line of sight. You can use drones in a warehouse. You can use drones in a container port. You can use them in a mine. Like the breadth of use cases for drones is enormous. It's bigger than the breadth for manned aviation, for obvious reasons, size, expenditure, etc. But it's just huge.
Yeah, well said.
I'm done.
Can I just add
to
that?
Alpita.
Yeah,
go ahead.
So I think that we've got the dark side, which people are concerned about, but there is light. I mean, there's really a mirror image for every kind of negative incident, like I was talking about in the Midway Airport 2015 incident where you had the drone on the airport. There are also drones can be used really effectively, and I think in Europe, Geoff, we talked about this, at airports for inspections, for things like runway inspection and safety inspection. So, like I said, we have both sides, and we really need to educate and not stop the train, just move cautiously.
Yeah, absolutely. And here in the DFW region, our COG 911 department is using drones to 3D model schools for their 911 dispatch. So if there's ever an incident in the schools, law enforcement will have an in-depth or inside look on what's going on behind each door.
Right. I mean, this is almost like 20, 30 years ago on the internet, right? There's the great things the internet does, and then there's, of course, the challenges. So we haven't gotten that right, or we're working on that too. So this will be a generational effort.
Right, and before Ernest again, Beth, clean up on this particular question, and we'll move on to talk about Illinois specifically. One thing, Geoff, that you said that seems to be a recurring pattern is a lot of cases, if you kind of go back in history of innovation, where there's been very big change and a lot of change of public perception. It's been really a grassroots type of thing. It's like accumulation of thousands, if not tens of thousands, of these little stories that ultimately move the mountain of public opinion. And I think lead into what you're going to talk, potentially what you might talk about, Ernest, but we certainly know what you're doing in terms of building like what you've done in North Texas at a grassroots level, and then really getting it to a very large level. It's kind of like that, politics is local, like all politics is local. Like I've also, the last thing is I chatted into the window here an interesting book that has come to mind several times here called Regulatory Hacking, that some of you may be aware of. It's basically the intersection between regulation and policy on the one hand and startup innovation on the other. You look at Uber, you look at Lyft, you look at all these, companies, even SpaceX is probably the biggest example of that, where it's really kind of a lot of the magic is sort of getting after the big problems in the world, which often have a huge regulatory barrier. But for those who are able to break through that and then ultimately create the larger public awareness are really the ones who make the huge change in the world. So Ernest, please share with us your magic wand or latch on to someone else's here. I'd love to get your perspective to round out this part.
Yeah, my magic wand would be federal investment. We may not need it now, but there's going to be a huge need for investment in infrastructure around this country for autonomous drone flights of all shapes and sizes. Without federal investment, it's going to ensure that process is really slow to take on around the country, and only those regions that have significant PPOs in place will be able to take advantage of it. I think drone tech, drone integration, alongside automated vehicles are the two new horizons in this country, two big opportunities for economic development that I think nationally we should start taking advantage of from a manufacturing and a workforce development perspective. Without national funding, that's going to make it real hard to do. So if I had a magic wand, national funding on the level of probably a space program to get some of these automated programs instituted around the country, get our cities smarter, I think that's needed. If I had a magic wand, I'd take that. And that would solve all the other problems. So if we had funding for infrastructure, we'd have more funding as private entities for the outreach, for the public awareness, all those other campaigns that we need to integrate.
Very well said. And, many of you may know that one of the leading countries for drones is the fair, small country of Switzerland. Well, why is that? And I see Ernest and the number of you nodding. It's because really the leading open source platform was founded by a Swiss guy. And he basically took it back to his home country, convinced his government to invest massively in breeding the ecosystem there. And so one day Switzerland may be better known for drones than it is for banking. And other countries are not sitting still on this. And I think very much so it is becoming a national priority for us, as a country to even stay competitive in the new age. So now let's let's go local here. And let's talk about Illinois. The whole kind of headline for this panel was really around, well, why Illinois? And, I'm going to start back up with Sharon about, why Illinois for a drone ecosystem, Sharon? What are some of the characteristics that you think could really make it happen here? And you can go and unmute. We need to unmute you. Lori, can I get help?
I got it. Thank you. Well, when I think about why Illinois, three things come to mind. The first one is I like to think of it as a world-class infrastructure. And when I say infrastructure, I'm talking about the fact that we actually have 12 airports, 5 international airports, and then 7 other commercial airports around the state. You think about the size of the airports like O'Hare. When it comes to rail, because all of what drones fits into, and it kind of builds upon what Ernest says, it's about the infrastructure. And so we're the only state in the union that has 7 Class 1 freight railways. So when you start thinking about infrastructure within the country, and where we're located here in Illinois, centrally located, that helps to build upon what Geoff said. The rivers and waterways, we've got 2 major inlet ports and then 14 waterway ports. So, there's an opportunity, and not a lot of states can really touch upon all this. And then even just roads, forget about their conditions, but we've got the 3rd largest interstate highway system in the country. So all of that bundled together makes infrastructure one of the reasons why Illinois could be critical, because I can just see us building and expanding our infrastructure capability. And then the second one is our technology and innovation positioning across the country. When you start thinking about what we have done pre-pandemic in terms of investments of R&D funding in the state, there are over 5,000 patents issued by inventors here in the state of Illinois since like 2015. We've got 83 Nobel Prize winners. We've got an incredible number of digital startups that have launched here annually the last couple of years. And then also the corporations and the R&D facilities that are located here. So that really kind of says infrastructure, technology, innovation. And the third one, of course, is the various industries we have, particularly when you look downstate in agriculture. Agriculture is one of the fastest growing categories, industries that are utilizing drones. And so I think that that in itself would really position us well to really embrace drone technology and really be more proactive and do similar to what Ernest and the team down in Texas are doing in terms of really putting Illinois on the map. I think we could do that here also.
So Sharon, it's going to be a hard act to follow that you just there for other panelists here. But, you know, and you know, Sharon, you're wonderful and you're humble. And just so everyone knows, Sharon brings a very interesting perspective here because, you know, she's been working in drones globally for a long time and is very well known nationally. And so really the things that you've been able to distill, you know, kind of, you know, even offline before this panel around Illinois, it's really quite eye-opening for those of us who are newer to the industry, who maybe have been entrepreneurs in Illinois. I think you shared a report recently that was interesting where Illinois currently, you know, is ranking relatively low, right, as far as where the current standing is, which just shows that there's so much headroom for growth here. And as you mentioned, there's a lot of these other resources. So Alpita, anything you'd like to, and let's Lori unmute Alpita, that you'd like to, you know, add to or comment on what Sharon said regarding Illinois.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree that Illinois has, I've also, I didn't say this in my bio, I was a consultant for World Business Chicago some time ago. And I agree that we have all of the different industries in Chicago, manufacturing and service. And I think not more than 17%, and this is the Chicago region, in one area. So drone applications can be in almost all of these sectors that are in Illinois. I know for our clients, we've got people in the construction industry. We have clients in real estate. We have clients also in the film and civic and government entities. So there's a lot of use, I think, in all of the industries in Illinois, because it's a very diverse in terms of the industries that are here. So we can see a lot of different applications, right? It won't just be like Alaska, for example, where you're going to have a certain type of, and we have rural and we have city. So we have, you know, again, great testing for different types of applications. And, you know, and we also have the airports, right? So that would be my why Illinois.
Right. Jacob?
So, you know, Geoff kind of talked about it when he was talking about Amazon. And I think this, you know, also goes back to the public awareness and the education. Is in order for any of these platforms to be successful, they're going to have to prove that they're reliable and that they're safe. Because the minute that one of these things injures a little kid in a neighborhood while an Amazon package is being dropped off, you know, or it falls out of the sky and causes a car crash or something, you know, you could throw it all out the window. The public is going to flip and look negatively at everything. It doesn't matter, you know, the good that we're trying to demonstrate with it. You have to show that these unmanned systems are being developed and they can work successfully. So that's really, you know, what these larger companies like Amazon, FedEx, even Valqari are going to have to prove in order to get the approval through the FAA and to move forward with this. So, you know, if anybody's ever tried to apply for a waiver through the Part 107 to bypass a regulation, and before the Part 107, there was the 333 exemption process, which was very lengthy, where you had to go through every single federal air regulation for manned aircraft and explain why you wanted to be exempt from that regulation and how are you going to achieve that successfully. And you have to do the same thing now to bypass a Part 107 regulation. And the FAA really looks at it and scrutinizes it and tries to decide, are you going to operate this safely? What is the equipment you're going to use, the safety features involved? to make sure that the risks is very low. So being in Illinois, and especially the Chicagoland area with these two major airports, provides a big opportunity for us to demonstrate that we can operate these safely in a big metropolitan area, but we can operate them safely through a very busy airspace. We have a Class Bravo and a Class Charlie airspace, and a few Class Deltas that are nearby. So we have an intermixing of different airspaces that we're trying to operate these in, and still trying to grow the awareness of unmanned systems and start to use them legitimately for these deliveries. That's going to be the biggest hurdle, but I think that's our biggest opportunity here in Chicago.
That's well said, Jacob. And we love our friends in North Dakota, right, and other places, where they've got an early start on drone corridors and regulatory relief. But to quote Frank Sinatra, if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. That could be one of the calling cards for Chicago. If you can make it in that little thing between Midway and O'Hare, you can make it anywhere, my friend. So there's the challenge. The gauntlet is thrown. So Geoff, regarding Illinois, again, from an international and overall perspective, what are some of the kind of interesting elements that you see in our region that you think we could really leverage to take it to the next level here?
Well, I think Sharon pegged a lot of it. You have all the railways from the north-south ones and the east-west ones. You've got the double stacks and the single stacks. You've got the pipelines. You've got the ports, the rivers. Like you have a great diversity of use cases to demonstrate. You have everything from the most depopulated rural area to the densest, and everywhere in between. If you can demonstrate flight hours and takeoffs and landings in between two cornfields, then the FAA regulators see that as a track record, and that's what you take forward. If you don't start by doing something between Navy Pier and the old Meeks Field, whatever it's called now. You do it out far away from everybody, and then you prove successes and come forward. I think the other thing that Alpita picked up on is the sort of the diversity. In addition to diversity of terrain, you've got diversity of industries. So if you can do it for a Morton Salt, looking at, for example, any failures in their equipment that you can identify from using a drone with a heat imaging, then you'll be able to do it in every factory, like not just Illinois, not just the US. If you can prove it here, you can, as Frank said, do it anywhere. It's what I find really curious is, you have a real node of drone expertise in San Diego. You've got Zing in Florida. You've got Autonodyne on the East Coast. Next door, you have in Ohio. There's Workhorse and Ohio Drone. It does kind of boggle the mind as to why not there. Why not in Illinois? I know of one drone operator, and I know of Valqari. I'm sure there are more, but to be honest, I've been looking pretty hard, and if I can't find them, they're really hard to find, or they're not involved in the particular market that I'm curious to. So, and again, going back to previous speakers, you have all the education of IIT, Loyola, and UIC, and that's just in Valqari. You have the big engineering schools. You can for the technology part of it. Look, to be honest, the technology is not the point anymore. It's, most things are mostly solved. The finessing of joining technologies together is where it's at, which is why I'm particularly interested in Valqari. But we now have drones that I have in my other business that can do 1,500 kilometers with 10 kilograms of payload without really breaking a sweat. So the technology is not the point. The market is, and Illinois has every possible advantage. You just got to get on it, really.
I love that call to action. That's awesome. So Ernest, again, bring us home here on why Illinois.
Oh, I don't know if I can answer the why Illinois question, but I could tell you how I arrived and how we arrived at the why DFW region, and maybe that lesson learned will help you guys determine what you need to know. So when we first started our task force, first thing we needed to do was inventory those stakeholders in the region that were doing the work. Those folks who've been toiling in the dark in the drone industry in our region without significant assistance from cities, no real collaboration amongst other entities. And what we found was there was a plethora of actors in the field doing that type of work. In particular, we found we had manufacturers from the small drones to air taxis with Bell and already in our region. We had significant amount of school districts who were looking at instituting drone programs already in the academic level. We found that there are numerous universities, four-year universities in our region already doing drone-related research for NASA and the NSF and other entities, and they're doing all this on their own. We found that there were companies like Ron Pointers who were selling drone kits to schools, but there wasn't a network that tied these groups together. We had a nation-leading law enforcement response unit that was training, certifying together with drone tech, using drones to respond to hurricanes, etc. They didn't have any help from the state, from local stakeholders. They weren't pulled together with the industry, with the infrastructure. So what we found, we had all these pieces and all these what we feel are nation and world leading pieces operating together. What it needed was a group or an organization to pull those folks together. hub88 can serve the Chicago area and Illinois as a state doing the same thing. But what you first need to do is inventory who those folks are that are doing the work. And if it's not there, you got to find it. I know for Deloitte in the consulting side of things is doing big work in drones there. But in terms of what those pieces are, where you're going to be leaders nationwide, I'm not sure where Chicago is, but you guys need to figure that out. And the sooner you do, though, that'll give you the direction you need. Find who your leaders are and go from there.
I see a big thumbs up from Ken. You got Phil you got the founding members here of hub88. Huge thumbs up. We're going to definitely call on you as a forever friend of ours, Ernest, in terms of this journey. Very well said. And again, thank you. I mean, we're looking forward to, helping you with your drone competition for the students. I mean, I know Tony and team are very excited about that. It's going to be awesome. All right, so let's take a little pause here. I'm looking at the clock. Let's take a question that came in through the chat. So Lori, would you be able to go ahead and read off one of the questions you've identified, and we'll kind of go to the panel, starting back up at Sharon after you read it out.
Sure. So earlier on, and I know, Ernest, you hit on this a little bit with your magic wand and desire of federal funding and federal support, but does anyone have an idea about what Illinois is doing now to invest in this sort of, the drone technology and advancing our cause?
Okay, and I'll throw it out to anyone to, go first on that. Anyone? What's Illinois currently doing as a government, I assume, to invest in this ecosystem? I think there you have the issue.
Here's what I just wanted to say on this. And so I wanted to quote the task force report that was issued in 2016 or 2017 to the former governor. And it said that Illinois would be wise to develop forward-thinking regulations in this space. So there was already a call there, I think, and there may already be a new group with Governor Pritzker. We need to connect with them. So that's what I feel. There may be a couple individuals, but there's not, I think in Ernest's state, there is actually a committee, right? That's public and that has a website or produces publicly available material. So,
And
Sharon?
Sharon?
Good question. Sharon?
Yeah, I was going to say that I don't know, other than what Alpita just raised, I don't know of a specific working group at the state level. I do know that the state police have actively purchased drones for their use, as well as several other public safety agencies around the state. But I have not seen a wholesale effort in terms at the state level of engaging drones, other than the report that Alpita referenced.
Yeah, in our state, in the state of Texas, there hasn't been any significant investment from the state, in particular from a financial level. Both of us are behind the New Yorks, North Dakotas, North Carolinas of the world in terms of investment, and that needs to change. I think every metropolitan area in the country should have investment from their state in drone integration at this point.
And the real issue, to build upon what Ernest just said, it does come back to public awareness and education. The more you have people understanding the drone capabilities, the efficiency gains, as well as the life save. I mean, just public safety alone, it is no longer an issue of whether or not drones can save lives. It's how many drones now, how many people's lives are lost if they're not using drones. And so, you know, when you start thinking about that, equation has started to evolve. The case use has been proven. Now it's just a matter of more broadly adoption of the capability at a local level.
Yeah, Sharon, Sharon is the perfect person to have as a part of your group, because not only is she doing this work professionally, but she's also one of our vendors. Our first public awareness campaign, which we're calling our Know Before You Fly Your Drone workshops. Sharon is one on the team that's conducting those for us. We're translating the platform to a virtual platform now, where we're planning to do monthly workshops around the Metroplex virtually to educate our general public on drone use, drone safety, where to fly safely in our Metroplex, drone careers, what are drones being used for within the Metroplex, what are drones not being used for, resources, training resources, etc. So Sharon is doing that for us. And the way we're building that program out is for folks like Sharon to go to other metropolitan areas and do that same training. So I would definitely encourage hub88 and other stakeholders in Chicago to get with the Sharons of the world to do those workshops now, because that's going to be integral in breaking down some of these integration barriers.
That was a great question. Yeah, we need to have a drone with like a Superman cape and like that big S across the bottom saying, here's 10,000 stories as to how, super drone or super UAS, I'm sorry, has actually made a huge impact in everyday people's lives. Yeah, it's great. So any other, from our panel, any other comments on that question? It was a really good one. All right, fantastic. Okay, so we're going to go for the next 15 minutes, and then we're going to have a little wrap up at the end. On one last of our questions here is, and I think you've all kind of shared some of the impact stories of showing the potential of drones. And I'll just sort of invite each of you, if there is, each of you just one additional story around the real positive impact of drones that you have seen in your experience that you think may illustrate one of the key points we've talked about, or that you just think deserves to have more awareness, that there is such a use case. That's why I'll ask you each to share with us. And so, Sharon, why don't we go back up to you? And you're a pilot as well. So either from your own experience or others that or work with, what is one of your favorite stories of the impact of drones?
Well, I'll tell you one of my favorites, and it is ongoing because it's a progression project, but we've been engaged in a project involving the 26 miles of Chicago shoreline from the northernmost point of Chicago, which is at the Evanston border, all the way down to Calumet City, which is the border of Indiana. And our engagement has involved capturing specific footage of beach shoreline erosion caused by the rising lake water level. So we work with the coastal engineer, and we were brought in to actually capture the drone footage. And most people think, oh, you were doing some beautiful shots of the city. And actually, no, we were actually had the camera pointing down at the shoreline, looking for specific damage points that have been causing water. So you may recall, particularly in the winter when there are high winds, the water washes up on Lakeshore Drive and there's ice, or they have to shut down part of the drive, or even this past spring during heavy rains, the water level was so high they had to shut down parts of the beach pre-pandemic. But the footage provided the city and the respective engineers an aerial view of the extent of the damage. And then the subsequent aerial capture supports project progression as the repair work is done. So they brought us in last summer, and we literally had to walk 26 miles. And if you know anything about the city, it's not a straight 26 miles, but it took us about 2.5 days using a drone. The next time we'll probably use a fixed wing. We did all rotary drones this time, quadcopters, these last few times that we've done it. But we went in initially to capture what the damage looks like from an aerial view. And then in the fall and over the winter, the engineers and the repairs, some engineers, I should say, some engineering work was done, as well as some repair work. And then they had us come back right after the pandemic hit, which at first they were a little bit shy about bringing us back. And we were like, no, this is the perfect time, because the lakefront is closed and we can be much more proficient in our time and have so much more efficiency gain, which we did by having to not work around people. But what they had us capture was not only what the repair work looked like, but then also for those areas that were not repaired over the winter, what additional damage had been done, and they could compare it to the footage from last year. And then also, as they had been doing work, what does it look like in terms of needing some additional shoring up? And I gotta tell you, one of the hardest things about it was the post work. The capturing the footage is the easy part, other than the physical labor involved with walking 26 miles over a couple of days. But the post-production work, which is the actual data capture, because I didn't realize at the time until we sat down with the city and really understood the scope of the project, how many individual beaches there are. And that's what they needed. They needed us to capture the footage and then file it and create a file for each beach, including the private beaches, which at the time I didn't know Chicago had private beaches. So if you ever get a chance to just use Google Earth and just go down the lakefront, you'd be really surprised at the number of private and just total beaches we have, which actually, it was great because you get a chance to see the part of the city you've never seen. But it was very informative, not only for us, but for our client in this case, which was the city, to really understand what that damage looked like. And it's really made a difference in terms of what work they're doing. And now we're part of the progression as they do more repair work. Then we do more footage to take a look at that in the ongoing piece. So that's one that I don't think a lot of people would realize that drones are really invaluable for. And I think otherwise they would have had to use a helicopter, which would have been extremely expensive to capture.
That's awesome.
Tom, can
Alpita?
I go? Tom, can I go?
Oh yeah, go ahead. No, absolutely, go ahead.
Thank you. Sorry, Alpita. The one thing that I'm really excited about drones is their use as a tool for STEM education. One of my big passions, and the main reason why I took the job down here, was the opportunity to run our aviation career initiative. And I got the opportunity to be a founding member of the Tuskegee Next program, which is a program up in Chicago area where they still take inner city Chicago youth and get them their private pilot's license over a summer. Jacob, Mr. Reed, you got a lot of our Tuskegee Next students at your university, actually. Yeah. And that gave me the passion on aviation career introduction to students and STEM education. So I've been seeing that drones as a gateway to aviation careers and aviation education for students is a great driver and a great tool for the platform to start getting more aviators out there, because believe it or not, we have taken a step back because of COVID, But in 5 to 6 years, we're still going to need those pilots. We're still going to need all of that, those educated and that workforce. So as a STEM tool, I think you guys are on the right track for supporting STEM, but try to get drones implemented in that program and support the programs around your area, and you'll be on the right track. In particular, Aerostar and Tuskegee Next. Those are the 2 programs I'm familiar with.
Awesome. Jacob, do you want to go next?
Oh, sure. You know, I mean, there's thousands of use cases, and it seems like there's something being developed almost daily that fulfills a need. You know, if you really kind of stop and think about why these unmanned systems were developed, they cover the 3 Ds. So it's, you know, something that's dull, it's dirty, or it's dangerous. And, you know, you can think of any of the many tasks, even something as old and archaic as a dishwasher. Your laundry system is an unmanned system that, you know, was developed to fulfill a role and fulfill a need. So now we're starting to see it in terms of an aerial application, in points like Sharon said. You know, you have costly ventures, and then you have jobs that are, you know, just long and dull. So you can send a computerized system out there to do it, which is great. But now, if you really want to get into the interesting aspect of it, start researching systems that use interoperability, whether it's manned and unmanned teaming, where they're talking together to achieve a mission, or you have an aerial platform talking to an unmanned ground vehicle, and they're both collaborating together to achieve a task, whether it's the aerial system looking at the route that the ground vehicle is taking and then telling it about obstacles, you know, a flooded area or flooded street, and rerouting the unmanned ground vehicle. This is all interoperability. This is all AI and in the thinking of where this technology is going. And I think interoperability is probably the best area to focus for these unmanned systems. And that's what really gets me excited, is seeing all those different applications. And again, that's, like I said, where I like to focus my research and try to focus my next set of objectives and tasks.
That's a great point, Joy. And there's so many fields, you know, healthcare is one I just have been more familiar with, banking, whatnot, where kind of standardizing interoperability has been ultimately that last key missing ingredient to really see an industry totally take off. And then obviously there's the regulatory side, which we spent a lot of time on. It's a great point. So let's circle back now as we kind of come down the home stretch over to Geoff. And if you'd like to, you know, is there any other, you know, one additional story real quick you'd like to share? I know you said you shared a whole bunch of great ones. If there's just one more you want to leave us with, feel free.
Look, you're exactly right. There's a grab bag of great stories, and it's really hard to find ones that work. Which star do you bring out? And so I particularly appreciate the ones that Sharon, Jacob, and Ernest have brought up. I think because I'm brought in here to be your international perspective, I'm going to go with a real multi-use story that I've heard that involves a long-distance, high-capacity drone that is really working. I mean, it's like drones only really create value when they're in the air and carrying something, and this group really have nailed the full use, the full spectrum solution. On the one hand, they work for mining companies, and they do surveys with ground penetrating radar to find anomalies which indicate gold and diamonds. So that's what makes their bread and butter. The next step is that they work for the local Ministry of Justice in conjunction with the United Nations Office for Drugs and Crime, which is actually against drugs and crime, but you know, minor detail. And they find smugglers and the IUU, illegal, unmonitored, and underreported fishing, which, you know, if you're a small coastal state, that's all you've got. That is basically why Somalia and Yemen are so fragile is that their fishing markets have just been sucked up. So they work with the ministries there to try and support the national government and their GDP. That they do at a discount. The mining is at full price and then some. Then they work. Then they do deliveries for people, pickups and deliveries for people like the Gates Foundation under the Ministry of Health, doing things like epidemiological studies of COVID, Ebola, infant mortality. So that kind of use of getting quotes fresh samples from up to 400 miles away is immeasurably valuable because it completely saves so much money and improves the quality of testing on behalf of the pathologist. So there you've got a national health benefit. And then in their spare time, they track elephants. So like one of those, each one of those is a fantastic use case. What they've done, and what I completely, I was blown away when I heard the story, was that they used the commercial activities, the mining, natural resources, forestry, market analysis and assistance to fund all that other public goods. And that, I just think, it's all drones and it's all good. In fact, it's one drone and it's working its little, working very hard.
Thanks, Geoff. That's awesome. And Alpita, you got to share that one. Alpita, go ahead with your use case here, your story, or soon-to-be story, hopefully.
Yeah. So we have clients that are using drones for mostly construction and in the real estate sector. Though we do have a company that does cleaning, large jobs like airports and things like that. And they were asking about using drones for disinfecting over large areas. And I know that there have been some test cases already in New York with Buffalo. A company called Eagle Hawk, I think, got some approval. But it's regulatory. It's interesting because it's not a Part 107 commercial. You need like a Part 137 for agriculture to spray, agricultural drones license to spray crops. But this question of spraying areas for disinfectants over stadiums, for example, after, as we start going to places like Lollapalooza again next year, that's a question. So there's a little regulatory gap. So we keep finding these gaps. So it's exciting territory.
Regulatory hacking, Amazon it, or whatever, I book it. Regulatory hacking. All right. Well, look, we are 5 minutes in. This has been fantastic. I'm just like trying to keep up with you all. I'm really glad this is recorded because I think I'm going to watch it over again. I think everyone here can get a sense that, we got some real grassroots energy here, and really grassroots is really understate the amount of expertise that is represented by all of you, beyond just the panel. Too many of you I can see who've joined us are longtime friends or others who've participated early in the drone interest group. So, again, email us drones@hub88.org. And, I'm going to hand it off to Lori here to wrap us up here and round up the session. So go ahead, Lori.
I just want to say thank you to everyone who participated, for all of you people who joined us today. It really is, I'm so excited. It's like not the final frontier, because we keep saying that, and then there's something else, right? But it's certainly the next frontier. And there's so much opportunity. It seems to be in such its infancy. And yes, there's challenges, but there's also such excitement and opportunity, like I said, to change the world. And so I love all your participation, and I love the idea that hub88 can be the hub of the wheel of what happens here, bringing together education and industry and the aviation sector and research, all together to do some wonderful things. So this has been a great Tech Talk. please sign up, go to the website and sign up for the drone interest group. Sign up for next October's or this next month's Tech Talk on cybersecurity and remote work and privacy. And I can't really think of anything else. The recording will be up usually within 24 to 48 hours on the hub88 site, YouTube channel, I think, and as well as the site. So check that out. And again, thank you to all of you for participating.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody. It was an honor.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, panel. Thank you.